And we're live.
Hello.
Hello.
La la la.
For the first time and the last time, I will say this is going to be the worst lighting you guys see of the two of us for our live stream. This is Monday night generational change. I'm Peter.
I'm Jen.
And I'm doing it backwards just because what the hell? Why not?
Well, because we're kind of dark anyway. I actually have the little thing right here. I even have that little ring light and it's like right on me. And yet I know I don't look right. And I was running late because I was hanging out with Matthew Ho. And so then I got back.
That'll be an interesting conversation. And today I visited the FDR Library in Hyde Park, New York, just outside of Poughkeepsie. So I've been running all over the place. You've been running all over the place. But we cannot let our esteemed guest wait, because if there is a night to have him on, this is the night with everything that has been going on. Jen, would you like to do the honors?
Yes, I'm very excited. So, guys, we're going to be talking with Norman Finkelstein. This is someone who I have known of, followed for years and years, someone who is very scholarly and smart on many, many issues, especially that being Israel-Palestine. But we're going to talk about a bunch of fun things tonight, I think.
Yes, we definitely are. This is a very interesting time to have this conversation because obviously of what's happened over the past several days, particularly with Robert Kennedy Jr. and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The issue of Israel is coming to the forefront fast and furious as the election season kicks into high gear. What better person to have on to discuss this issue for the first time in almost 2 years? It is with our esteemed pleasure to have you back, Norman Finkelstein. Welcome back to Generational Change.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. It's so nice to see you again. And the last time when you were on, I think there was other people. I think there might have been other people, but I'm so appreciative that you took the time to be here. We lately have been talking a lot about some of these issues and just what came up recently with our Congresswoman and RFK. With the playing of the anti-Semite card just gets all this stuff churned up again. I'm just so over her playing that card. But Peter, I'm not sure if you had a particular order you wanted to go in or how you wanted.
Yeah, I think I think the importance here of this particular issue, it's always used for political gamesmanship. But as we saw over the past week, the issue of Israel is one that people use specifically to try to, in my opinion, they're doing it to appease AIPAC, or to prevent them from coming after them. If you could start, Mr. Finkelstein, with just the sheer impact that AIPAC, Jen, forgive me, the other one.
DMFI. It's DMFI. It's the Democratic Majority for Israel, the counterpart.
It seems to me that the goal here is either to get as much AIPAC and DMFI money as possible, or to try to prevent them from throwing money against, their political opponents or whoever they may be. But would you say that that's a huge part of the constant fawning over Israel in the political arena?
There are two factors at play. One is a foreign lobby, an agent of a foreign government, not unlike other agents of foreign governments, except for the fact that Israel is not forced, like other agents of foreign governments, to register as such. So you have an agent of a foreign government, in this case AIPAC, and it's a domestic lobby. That's one factor. And lobbies, it's the nature of American politics and maybe of all politics, but we can speak with some certitude about American politics. Lobbies can exercise lots of power. As everybody knows, the gun lobby has a lot of power. The NRA, the Cuba lobby used to have a lot of power. And you can go down the list. A big pharma, the lobby has a lot of power, and the Israel lobby fits into that power. Now, before going to the second aspect, there are some specific qualities of the AIPAC that have to be borne in mind. It's a foreign lobby. It's a lobby for a foreign government. However, it also has, or had until very recently, a huge domestic constituency. Now, the Cuba lobby obviously had a huge domestic constituency also, mostly based in Miami. But the Israel lobby had a huge domestic constituency, which was very rich, politically powerful, and strategically placed. So that significantly, probably exponentially, increased the power of the Israel lobby. So there are aspects of the Israel lobby which are typical of all lobbies, but also aspects of the Israel lobby that are peculiar to that lobby. And mostly it's that huge domestic constituency that it commanded, and that domestic constituency had a lot of money, has a lot of money. Jews are the wealthiest religious ethno-religious group in the United States, also play a salient role in the arts, in publishing, in Hollywood. And we're very committed to the cause. Now that's one half of the picture. The other half of the picture is that Israel is a strategic asset for the United States in the Middle East. At the elite level, not the popular level, at the elite level, at the executive level, at the bureaucratic level, there is a regular exchanging of intelligence. There's a regular coordination of policy and military coordination, intelligence coordination at the elite level. And that's pretty much a constant. I would say, regardless of how, however much Israel becomes unpopular in the United States, the intelligence military cooperation will remain a constant, and it will play a critical role in the U.S.-Israeli relationship, regardless of how popular Israel is as a domestic cause in the United States. So to take the obvious example, Saudi Arabia is a key player in the Middle East, a critical U.S. ally, and whether the Saudi prince kills a Washington Post reporter or not, at some point that becomes a sideshow, and the key fact is Saudi has oil, Saudi has power, Saudi is a critical ally. That's a constant. And it's the same thing with Israel. So this or that Democratic senator or Republican senator, Democratic congressperson or Republican congressperson, this or that executive president might be personally disaffected by Israel's policies, say the current ones of the Israeli government. It's not going to change the relationship very much, any more than Biden said that SBM, what's his name? It just slipped my mind. The Saudi head of state.
Ben Salman.
Excuse me?
Wasn't it it's Ben Salman? Something Ben Salman. What, right? Crown Prince, something like that.
The initials they use for him.
ABS.
Is it ABS?
I think it is, right?
No.
I'm going to have to look it up now just to be sure. So give me one second.
But okay, while you're looking, so when he killed the Washington Post reporter,
Mohammed Ben Salman.
MBS. When MBS killed the Washington State reporter, he didn't just kill him; he grinded his bones. When he grinded the bones of the Washington Post reporter,
Jamal Khashoggi.
Yeah, Biden said he's a pariah. Saudi is a pariah state. That lasted a few weeks. And in the same way, if Israel goes alt-right with a theocratic lunatic theocratic government, there may be some grimaces in the Oval Office, but like MBS, there are critical allies, so very little will change. That half of the equation I consider a constant, namely the elite coordination, the strategic asset that Israel is. That's going to be a constant. Where it's going to change and where it's clearly changing is the power of the Israel lobby, because as I said, up until recently, that lobby could count on a huge domestic power in its favor, namely the Jewish community. And that's beginning, it's been breaking up. I wrote a book on the subject called Knowing Too Much, How the American Jewish Romance with Israel is Coming to an End. I wrote that already a decade ago. And everything I predicted has pretty much come to pass. It's an incremental process, but it's clear that American Jews in particular, under 40 years old, and even more so under 30 years old, have become disaffected, estranged from the state of Israel, and are not about publicly to defend it any longer. On the other hand, they're not about en masse. There are, of course, individuals, but en masse, they're not about to publicly attack it either. Israel will be treated as a kind of embarrassment, like if you know Yiddish, the expression meshuga, as a kind of meshuga means crazy, like the meshuga ant who's locked up in the attic. And when you're having a dinner party and the meshuga ant is banging on the door, you all pretend that she's not there. Right. And it's the same thing with Israel. So at communal events, whether it's a Passover or a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, everybody knows, don't bring up Israel. It's just going to be a consensus, a tacit consensus. Don't bring up Israel. So I think there won't be an outright denunciation, but it's clear Israel has become an embarrassment to American Jews who are mostly moderate to liberal on the political spectrum. About 80% tend to vote Democratic, about 20% vote Republican. Israel is a Republican cause right now, and in the Democratic Party, a split is developing.
Yeah, what I would like to see is some of those Jews that are in Congress. And as somebody who is Jewish, I find it, reprehensible maybe that there was not a single Jewish congressperson standing next to Rashida Tlaib when she was making her most recent speech. Not one of the 9 people that voted against that resolution, basically swearing our eternal blood oath to the non-apartheid just state of Israel. And only 9 Congress people said no, none of them Jewish. And I find that so incredibly frustrating. And I am hopeful regarding what you're saying. And I do on the outside see that, and especially with younger Jewish people. But I find it so incredibly frustrating that not a single Jew in our House of Representatives can stand up on this.
I think it sounds crass, it sounds vulgar, but it's true, it's money. I don't think it's there's not a much more complicated answer than that. It's not like people are torn and people are conflicted and no. There's no torment, there's no anguish. It's just donor money on either side. That is, if you take a stand against Israel, your opponent is going to become the benefactor of huge amounts of money, as happened, I guess, with, my memory serves, that happened to Nina Turner in her campaign. So there, I think it's pretty crass. The conservative Jews who are fanatically pro-Israel, they're ready to give bucketfuls of money to hold aloft their cause.
Yeah. So I saw somebody mention in the comments, it was a super chat. So, we wanted to talk a little bit about this most recent change to the judicial laws in Israel that obviously Netanyahu and his right party have been pushing. And I know that there have been inordinate amounts of protesting for like the past, I don't know, how long has it been? It's like a month maybe in Israel against this change. Can you talk a little bit about that? And how, because it doesn't seem to me that the people in Israel, that like regular secular people and generally people that are to the left of the middle, are not with this. So it certainly is not representative of a majority of the people there that are wanting to sort of dismantle the Constitution.
Well, there are a number of things to be said about it. First of all, I have to say that I find the whole site, I know this may not be politically correct, but I find both the blazing headlines and the site of these demonstrations, I just find them completely sickening. Israel is, by any rational reckoning, not as a matter of sloganeering, not as a matter of hyperbole, Israel is an apartheid state. I'm not saying that to score points, some sort of tennis match. It's just a factual matter. There is one state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. There's one state. It includes the conventionally defined state of Israel, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and Gaza. There is no longer, by any legal term, an occupation. There is a de facto illegal annexation. The occupied territories, as they were called, came under Israeli control more than a half century ago. And as of now, and in the recent past, there has been no indication whatsoever, none, that Israel intends to relinquish control over those, what were called occupied Palestinian territories. Now, under international law, there is one thing and one thing alone that distinguishes an occupation from an annexation. And that thing is very simple. Occupations are temporary. Annexations are permanent. Well, more than a half century has elapsed. There's no indication whatsoever that Israel will now, or any time in the foreseeable future, relinquish control of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza. That means it's no longer an occupation. It's an annexation, which is to say there is one state. Now, in that one state, only half the population enjoys full rights of citizenship, and nearly all of the other half of the population, the Palestinian Arab half, nearly all of it, not all, but nearly all, enjoy no rights whatsoever, none whatsoever. Now, if you understand the structure of our Constitution, the 13th Amendment to our Constitution, it gave the former slaves the right of citizenship. That's the 13th Amendment. One second. I take that back, excuse me. The 13th Amendment ends slavery. The 14th Amendment, at the beginning of the 14th Amendment, it grants African Americans, not by name, but by result, it grants them the right of citizenship. And all the rights that we possess as Americans, they derive from the right of citizenship. So the 14th Amendment begins by giving African Americans the right of citizenship, and then it goes on to say that every citizen gets equal protection under the law, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So why do I mention this? Because nearly all of that other half of the population, the Palestinian Arab population of Israel, do not have the rights of citizenship, which then says they have no rights whatsoever. As I said, the logic of our own Constitution is all the other rights that we enjoy as Americans derive from that right of citizenship. So the Palestinian Arab population is basically a helot population. It's a slave population. And here I see all these blazing headlines about how Israel's fate, Israel's future is at stake in this Knesset vote on whether or not to limit the powers of the judiciary. And I'm thinking to myself, no, folks, Israel's fate and future was fundamentally decided at the moment it decided to annex the territories occupied by the Palestinian Arabs, but without giving them any rights. Israel then became fundamentally no different than South Africa or the United States in the pre-civil rights, what was called the Jim Crow era. What you have now in Israel is a system of, some people call it apartheid. I myself don't use that term because I don't think it resonates much for people who weren't even born when apartheid was already dismantled beginning in 1990. But most Americans understand or have a vague idea of that Jim Crow segregated American South, where African Americans de facto had no right of citizenship because they couldn't vote. And so what's happening now, yes, from the point of view of an Israeli, it might be seen as significant. I'm not going to deny that. But we have to bear in mind it's for a very limited portion of the population, half of whom of the population it's irrelevant. And even for the other half, the Jewish Israeli half, it's a very trivial part of the population that is really up in arms about what's going on. Yes, it looks like big demonstrations, but it's really not. It's the Tel Aviv, these enclaves of liberalism in Tel Aviv. But overall, Israel is an alt-right state, not just in its leadership, but in its population, which the leadership accurately reflects. If Mr. Netanyahu has been around for such a long time and is the longest sitting prime minister, there's a reason for it. Because the population overwhelmingly supports him or parties to his right and far right. That being said, and I don't deny that for Israel's Jewish population, it is a lively democracy for its Jewish population, and that Jewish population has repeatedly and overwhelmingly elected right, far right, and alt-right governments. Now, being that Israel is a democracy, that tells you an awful lot if you care to look, it tells you an awful lot about not only the Israeli state, but Israeli society. It's an alt-right country. So with all of those qualifications, namely the overall context of a Jim Crow system, the fact that even within the Jewish sector, about half the population, it's only a tiny fraction, the liberal Tel Aviv enclaves, that really care about Israel's liberal secular society. Within all those contextual elements, I personally just don't find it a very significant event.
I appreciate that. You said that very well. It's sort of like, with all the things that are going on over there, this is not the biggest concern that we should be having, and something that
it's not even a concern for 80% of Israelis. They're not part of the liberal Tel Aviv scene. That's not them. If they really exercised they were really demographically significant, were it true, how does it come to pass that every Israeli government since Ehud Barak left power, and that was in 2000, so we're talking about a quarter century ago, every Israeli government is comprised of right, far right, and all right members. Because these Tel Aviv liberal secularists, they count for nothing in Israel. And on the Palestinian question, they were uniformly always awful. Oh, I'm talking about the liberal seculars. You won't know these names because you're way too young, but people like Amos Oz, this Peace Now, which was just garbage. They were always awful in the Palestine question. What Israel succeeded to do for a very long time was to project, mostly for the sake of American liberal, moderate liberal, progressive American Jews, to project the image of being enlightened and progressive. But that was a veneer. Very, very nasty government, very, very nasty state. And how could it be otherwise? How could it be otherwise if you're maintaining this ruthless occupation over a population that's roughly equal to your own?
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. And, what we're seeing now, as been the case this past week, people are debating like who's in the right here, who's not. On the one hand, you have our congressional representative, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who can't, she can't quiver, can't bow at the altar of, the Israel lobby, but almost as hard in retrospect as RFK is doing. And so they had this huge dust up, at the end of last week. We have a video that we're going to play now, and we're going to comment on it. So hang tight, everybody. This should be very entertaining.
Last week, you floated a baseless conspiracy theory that the coronavirus was bioengineered to target Caucasians and Black people, but to spare Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people. Mr. Kennedy, your bizarre, unproven claim echoes that same historic slander of labeling Jews and Chinese people as a race, and that Jews, and in this case Chinese people, somehow managed to avoid a deadly illness that targets other groups for death. You do see that, yes or no?
You're misstating.
No. I quoted what you said earlier, and it is directly what you said. So just ask me yes or no.
I was describing an NIH-funded study.
No, you didn't cite any.
I was describing an NIH-funded study by Cleveland Clinic scientists.
Reclaiming my time. You did not.
Something's wrong or frozen.
Published in USC Medical, which is one.
The time is mine. I'm reclaiming it. Please ask the witness to stop talking.
You asked me a question.
Reclaiming.
Allow me to answer my question.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like about 10 seconds back.
The time belongs. You are slandering me.
A few months ago, Mr. Kennedy, you compared COVID public health policies to barbaric, murderous tactics of Nazi Germany, saying that Jewish people in Nazi Germany had more freedom than Americans facing COVID health restrictions. In hindsight, Mr. Kennedy, do you reject this absurd and deeply hurtful and harmful comparison, or do you still stand by it?
Congressman, what you are saying is a lie.
That you said it.
I did not. I never continued.
Okay.
I never, ever
Mr. Chairman, I'm
compared
happy to
COVID
enter into the record when Mr.
countermeasures.
Kennedy said that. I reclaim my time. In discussing COVID public health measures, you made light of the genocide against Jewish people by saying, and I quote, even Hitler's Germany, you could cross the Alps to Switzerland, you could hide in an attic like Anne Frank did. Do you think it was just as hard to wear a mask during COVID as it was to hide under floorboards or false walls so you weren't murdered or dragged to a concentration camp?
Of course not. That's ridiculous.
But that's a comparison that you made.
I did
Mr.
not
Kennedy,
make that
were the measures
comparison.
taken when discussing efforts to encourage others to get vaccinated for COVID-19, you said Nazis did that in the camps in World War II. They tested vaccines on gypsies and Jews. That was a quote. Like before, you apologized for invoking the Holocaust, saying, quote, to the extent my remarks caused hurt, I am truly and deeply sorry. These are not real statements of contrition or remorse. They are passive-aggressive non-apologies that blame the listener for reacting to the lie you just spread.
My, oh my, oh my. Who wants to take this first? Because this is not my territory.
I'm so tired of her. I mean, look, Norman, you're older than me. You've been around longer than me. But the anti-Semitism card is getting very old regarding everything.
Well, whenever I see Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I think of that Jackson Browne song, which you don't know, titled If I Had a Rocket Launcher. Now, I won't go further on that particular point, but I think you can figure out where I'm headed. One of the things that really strikes me about Debbie Wasserman Schultz is her claim to fame is because of Barack Obama. Obama appointed her the head of the DNC, and even as she was exposed as a complete out-and-out crook for trying to rig the Democratic primary in order to stop Bernie Sanders, Obama still rose to her defense, and he made a statement that we have Debbie Wasserman Schultz's back. She's such a disgusting, despicable, low-life creature, something that crawled out of a drain pipe or a sewer. First of all, the idea of her playing the anti-Semitism card. I'm wondering, Debbie, where have you been as the United States has poured over $100 billion into an army that's chock full of Nazis? Avowed Nazis, proud Nazis. They wear the swastika to battle. Isn't that a concern of yours? If you're so wedded to the lessons of the Holocaust, so anguished and tormented by what happened to the Jewish people, then why are you arming avowed, out-and-out Nazis in Ukraine? Then, the idea, we're put in a very peculiar position of having to choose between RFK and Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Right? I don't even, he is such a Zionist, and she's calling him an anti-Semite.
I know. You've sort of gone down Alice's rabbit hole when you start here. RFK is proclaiming that he's more pro-Israel than any other member of Congress. And now you have to choose between them because Debbie Wasserman Schultz, these are just shows to get her money, to get her paid from AIPAC. Mm-hmm. She's such a repulsive lowlife. And on top of that, just so stupid. So stupid. At least I'll credit RFK. There are some wheels turning upstairs when he speaks on subjects. On the subject of vaccines, you can agree with him or disagree with him, but he's knowledgeable. There's no question. When he says I cited an NIH study, in fact, he did cite an NIH study. He's actually read something. What do you get from Debbie Wasserman Schultz? You get some AIPAC algorithm She's just a machine, and an awfully stupid one at that, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, as you like to point out, Jen, she's not very nice.
No, the problem is this, okay? Whether or not I agreed with her or liked her, or whatever, I find that as my representative, the way that she speaks to people is reprehensible. She has somebody sitting in front of her voluntarily. This isn't some sort of criminal case where somebody's subpoenaed to be there, whether it's Matt Taibbi or RFK sitting there, and she's so vile how she talks to them. And I'm thinking, first of all, this is my employee, and I'm sorry that she's speaking to you out of line like this. But also I think, and we've talked about this a lot, she to me is one of the reasons why people might be anti-Semitic. Because when I look at her and I hear her like, for claiming my crime.
Totally agree.
I mean, it's not, it doesn't help. And I feel like she absolutely represents the worst of us. And yet she is in such a position to represent us at all. And it's really frustrating.
Somebody ought to buy her a T-shirt that reads anti-Semitic trigger.
You know, I can't remember who it was who said it the other day. I can't remember which, I think it was a podcast, but the line was, our friends at Due Dissonance, Keaton and Russell. Russell said specific, and he's Jewish and he lives in New York as well. And he specifically said, RFK could never invoke anti-Semitism in any capacity the way that Debbie Wasserman Schultz does. His obsession with Israel will never compare to how she comes off to the general public in the most negative Jewish stereotypes that you could possibly think of. And she welcomes it the second she has an opportunity to grandstand for the cameras. She is one of the quickest people who gets there. She's like Pelosi.
I told you, it's, sometimes people recoil at simple explanations. They rather have complex ones. It makes you seem more erudite and more a more profound thinker. But in her case, it's just money. She sends the tape to her AIPAC slave masters, and then she gets her check. That's it. She cares about Jews? No. She cares about the Nazi Holocaust? No. That's just not what...
let's be real. AIPAC doesn't care about Jews.
Yeah,
AIPAC cares about white Ashkenazi ethno state because the brown Jews are not treated well.
Norman, the other thing that I wanted to bring up about what she did in that whole grandstanding episode with RFK, which is really the crux of where so much of this, we talk all the time about the disingenuous nature of our elected representatives, but she's on a whole other level. I mean, she's as bad as it gets on the Hill. And the fact that RFK specifically said that when it came to the effects of the vaccine, that there was certain genotypes, specifically Chinese and Ashkenazi Jews, not all Jews, but Ashkenazi specifically were fairly resistant to the virus. And she turns around and says, oh, no, you're saying all Jews. And I'm thinking, everyone knows what he said. And then this was recorded in a private party on the Upper East Side, and everyone knows what he said. And you're still lying to the camera saying that he said something else.
And nobody would even, most people would have heard the Chinese. They wouldn't have even heard the Sephardic, the Ashkenazi Jews. He also later mentioned another immune group were the Amish. For most people, Amish, Ashkenazi, they're little things. They think about the Chinese. So, Chinese are engaged in germ warfare and all that, or claims are made, biowarfare. Okay. These people ran with the Ashkenazi Jews. They ran with it because they thought they're serving two slave masters. In the case of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's serving the AIPAC slave master and the DNC slave master. So she can get her AIPAC money by claiming anti-Semitism, but she also gets her DNC support by trying to throttle RFK or nip in the bud the RFK campaign. She's just a slave, a low-life slave, and so stupid. I reclaim my time, lady. Go back to your mahjong table. You don't belong in politics. You haven't a clue what you're talking about.
That's a yeah, and that is unfortunately, kind of where we are now. And I guess the good transition here is to say, Rashida Tlaib was not the only congressional representative who had something to say regarding the behavior of Israel. She wasn't the only person who had an opinion. Pramila Jayapal, who is the congressional representative of the greater Seattle area in Washington State, and is supposedly the head of the Progressive Caucus. This is not the first time that she had made a statement that was considered controversial, like maybe we should try to broker peace between Ukraine and Russia. And then all of a sudden she had to walk that back within 24 hours. Well, the same thing here with her statement regarding Israel, had to walk that statement back within 24 hours.
There's no spying.
But no one had it spy because Rashida's standing on the...
She said Israel is a racist state. Yeah, so by definition, how can you have an ethno state without it being a racist state? By definition, you have to be a racist state. I don't see how that's even controversial.
But I still think the biggest problem here is the fact that Rashida had to stand all by herself, that there was nobody that was willing to stand by her side and say, you know what, we agree. If there were the other 8 or 9 representatives that were in agreement with her on this particular statement, and they were all standing together in front of the camera, that would have gotten people talking. Even that small group still would have been enough to be like, well, this is interesting. But one person standing all by themselves, forget it. What do you have?
No. I agree with that. I just I invest very little faith, confidence in parliamentary radicalism, because unless you're trying to mobilize a constituency outside of Congress, mass support. How effective can you be on your own, or 6 people or 9 people in Congress? And these people, these 6, 9, 10, they don't try to organize a mass constituency. They operate within the very narrow constraints of Congress, where they're vying to get prominent seats on prominent committees, and therefore making themselves available to the powers that be in Congress. So you can't really get very much done. So it's not altogether surprising if they all more or less turned out to be, to use the old expression, turned out to be sellouts, because they're operating in a very constricted environment. And they're not doing what radicals do. Radicals try to build a constituency outside Parliament. So you're a force to reckon with. You may be one person in Congress, but you can be the representative of a real force outside. These people neither try nor do they have any force outside. So they're just very weak. Rashida Tlaib gets away with it. Even in my day, if you're a Palestinian and you attack Israel, it was sort of like you got a pass because, well, he's Palestinian or she's Palestinian. What do you expect them to say? If you're not Palestinian, then it was harder, because why are you saying that? You must be an anti-Semite or you must be a self-hating Jew. Otherwise, why would you be saying it? Whereas in the case of Palestinian, yeah, it figures they would say that. So it's much harder if you're not Palestinian. And most of those people won't take the chance. They won't take the chance. I mean, I was watching today AOC's exchange with the Department of Justice or FBI officials, those 2 fellows, Shea and I forgot the other guy's name. And it was so gobbledygook. It was like reading totally irrelevant, immaterial emails. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the best you can make use of your time, AA. 1 second. This is
What happens when you do a live stream?
This is the best you can make of your time. This stupid grilling of this fellow who is obviously telling the truth as he understood it. 1 second. Just give me a second.
The sad reality about AOC is that there really is a lot of high hopes still for her, and rightfully so. I think her best work has definitely come in the progressives that have rallied in New York City, a lot of people that have been running for local office, which is the most important offices. But in terms of what she does on the Hill, it's mostly just grandstanding like anybody else. There is no risk-taking in her DNA. And now she apparently has her sights set on Gillibrand's Senate seat. So, this is, it is unfortunate, but, you watch these upstarts get captured in real time by the DC machine.
It's very easy to get captured because you're not a part of a movement that keeps you, relatively speaking, honest. When you're part of a movement, you have a constituency to which you have to be more or less accountable, or else they take the hook and take you out. But when you're just like AOC and the others, she just helicoptered into office. She had no track record. She had no history of activism. She had been, I guess, a bartender. And she had no history of activism. She wasn't part of a movement, apart from an electoral campaign, a brief electoral campaign. So the fact that she was so easily bought off doesn't really come as a surprise. It was so obvious what was happening. Maybe you have to be a little older to see the obvious. Namely, Nancy Pelosi, she told everybody, Chuck Schumer and everybody around, don't worry, I'll take care of her. I know how to handle her. She's mine. Don't worry. And then Nancy Pelosi, who was quite attractive as a young woman, like Nancy Pelosi, she starts whispering, just listen to me. Just listen to me. And you'll be the Speaker of the House. Just do what I tell you, and you'll be the Speaker of the House. And you can imagine, it doesn't take much imagination, how that goes to your head. And then they start shopping together, and then they go to the same manicurist and the same pedicurist and the same beauty parlor, and then they start going shopping together. And what happens? No, it's no joke. That's the real world. Nancy Pelosi becomes Mama Bear. She says she's our Mama Bear, And for Pelosi, this is all old hat. She's been doing it for 40 years, for 50 years. She knows exactly how you pull the strings, manipulate people, entice people, lure people. For her, it's like easy as pie to do it. And after a short while, AOC just quickly fell into line. That can't, come as much of a shock unless you think people are made of something that they're not. So it's not really surprising. But to me, the only thing that's disconcerting is that people still maintain hope. They retain hope that somehow she will redeem herself, or there's some sort of silver lining in the cloud. There's nothing. And there's no reason why one would expect that there would be something. So,
well, then I think that's actually a very good transition to what's happening right now, which is you have to fight. There's two fronts that have to be fought. Obviously, we are huge advocates for the labor movement. I think that there is definitely something happening there that is going to allow us to potentially grow it into something much more exponential. If we check our egos at the door, that's obviously of tantamount importance. But then the other side of the coin is what I think could potentially be a huge inflection point in our electoral political system if Dr. Cornel West is able to ascertain some semblance of a outside movement that is going to potentially shake up the ultimate outcome of next year's election. And based on the way the Democratic establishment has been treating him in the infantile stages of his campaign, it tells me that they're very concerned about what he's up to.
Cornel West is my age cohort. I attended graduate school at the same time as him, though my memory is I don't have a distinct memory of having met him. He was in the philosophy department. I was in the politics department. He has a long history. I'm going to be honest about it. I have no reason. I don't want to fake anything. I don't think it's correct to say that he had a long history as an activist, because he belonged to a kind of jet-setting, radical chic milieu, a leftist, radical chic milieu, as we called it in my generation, the radical chic. But I credit him with these things. Number one, he's very smart. Nobody can take that away from Cornel West. He's an extremely smart guy, extremely knowledgeable. We used to use the expression, maybe your generation still uses it, describing somebody as intellectually a mile wide, but an inch deep. Well, Cornel West is a mile wide, but he's also very deep. He knows the details. He goes well below the surface. Very smart guy. He got his degree from Harvard in philosophy in 3 years. He then went to Princeton for graduate school, which was the top philosophy school in the country at the time. So he's first class. And I don't think we should forget that. And that's why I try to respect him by calling him Dr. West, because he earned his title, and I want to defer to a title that he's earned. Number two, he did spend a lot of the last 40 years, not in my opinion as an activist, but certainly cultivating ties with the activist grassroots community, which is to say, he knows a lot of people. He knows them on a first name basis. He knows their siblings and their parents on a first name basis. So for me, that says he does have the potential to activate a base. He does. He can put together, probably in a fairly short amount of time, a real grassroots network. And that's important. Number three, I would not say his political judgment is on the level of a Noam Chomsky. No, not correct. But there is an element of sophistication to what he says. So, for example, he's now come up with 2 slogans, which I think are very shrewd. He says, we have a choice between Trump's gangsterism and Biden's milquetoast neoliberalism. And he says that milquetoast neoliberalism is going to end up being a way station to fascism anyway. I think that's pretty accurate. I think that's sharp. A choice between, basically, as he likes to call it, Trump's gangster proclivities and Biden's milquetoast neoliberalism, which is going to only be a way station to that gangsterism. Secondly, he says, we're faced with a choice between a Trumpian domestic civil war and a Biden global nuclear war. I think that's correct also. Trump will probably foment a civil war. Biden is putting us on a collision course with China, which can only climax in a nuclear war. So those formulations as they capture the cul-de-sac, the dead end of the current political moment. So that to me also demonstrates a certain shrewdness by him. His more recent interviews on questions like Ukraine, I think, have been quite good. His statements on Israel, Palestine, I'm not perfectly satisfied with, but I would say they're certainly better than everybody else's. So I would call it, on my part, I'll call it a cautious optimism. I still have to wait and see. Once he gets past that first round of interviews, which has probably now been around 3 weeks now, and he's been everywhere and anywhere. He's been on some programs which have a constituency of maybe 10, viewership of maybe 10, and he's been on with Anderson Cooper. He's been on with Laura Ingraham. He was recently on with Sean Hannity, and that one was actually quite funny because Sean Hannity very naively thought he would get Cornel to attack Biden, and before he knew it, Cornel was right on Trump's case, and Sean Hannity didn't know what to do with this guy. So it was pretty, and of course, I love you, Sean. You're my brother. I love you. And Sean is saying, I love you, Cornel.
But he doesn't. But he does not let them get away with it. He does not let them get away with it, and that is going to be very interesting to watch because normally, you know, they're able to sort of control the narrative to get the guests to say what they want them on to say, and he wasn't having any of it. And the amount of years I've been watching him. They're not going to talk him around backwards. They're not going to be able to like word salad confuse him.
Because Cornel, he was a black man in white institutions. So he knows when he's being used. As he called Barama what was the, oh Christ, what's with my memory? The mascot of Wall Street, the black mascot of Wall Street. And he knows when he's being used as a black mascot, and he's not going to let them use him.
Yeah.
So he won't be easy in that way. He won't be manipulated. Because
I would love to watch him debate Donald Trump.
Well,
I would love that. It would be so entertaining.
You would. He's 70 years old. So for Cornel, it's like his last scene, last act, last scene.
Yeah.
And he wants to leave a legacy. So this is going to be for him, his legacy. And one thing about that, when you want to leave a legacy, you're no longer manipulable. You've passed that point where you can be manipulated because what would you get out of the manipulation? More money? He doesn't need more money. More fame? He doesn't really need more fame. More power? He doesn't really need more power. So he's pretty much his own agent. And that means it's going to be very tough to manipulate him. So those are all grounds, I think, for being hopeful. But the big question to my mind is, what will his ground operation look like? Now, I think
That's it. You hit it right on the head.
That's the whole bang right there. That's the whole bang.
I think there is a potential skeleton there. All those contacts he made over 40 years, and all those people, activists, whom he knows on a first name basis. So there's a potential there. Now, I'm hoping that in between interviews that he's doing, he's busy on that front, cobbling together the ground operation. If he manages to put that together, I think there's I do believe there are possibilities. I think there are possibilities. So I'm cautiously optimistic. It'll be interesting. I've already written a few things about it, in particular this whole spoiler issue. I think there are possibilities, and now we're going to have to see how they play out. If he were smart, and he is smart, if he were smart, he would do what they do in parliamentary democracies, which is they have what you call a shadow cabinet. What's a shadow cabinet? A shadow cabinet is the people who are going to occupy this position, that position, and that position if the opposition comes to power. So this is the shadow foreign minister. This is the shadow minister of health. This is the shadow minister of the economy. If he were smart, and he is, I would appoint the shadow cabinet right now. So people will see what they will get if he's elected. Now, you remember Obama, who was just a complete shyster, a crook. He made all these promises, and then immediately as he got elected, he put in his cabinet all the holdovers from the Clinton and from the Bush administration. His Secretary of Defense was Robert Gates, who was Bush's Secretary of Defense. And you knew from that moment this whole Obama thing was a complete fraud. It was a complete fake. He's a total charlatan. I think Cornel can convey a very potent message about what the future will bring if he names his cabinet now. Name the people. This is going to be the person in charge of the economy. This is going to be the person in charge of the Department of Education, the Department of Health, the Secretary of Defense. Who is he going to name the head of the CIA? Do it now. And that will convey a very, I think, assuming he makes the right choices, I think that will convey a real confidence in a Cornel administration, and it's not just a Barack Obama redux. We'll see.
Yeah. I thought, look, before we don't have to get into it, but, I've always said Obama is the most disappointing president I've ever voted for. And for me, it was having obviously unrealistic hopes and expectations that were never really there. I think, I saw what I wanted to see, but of all the presidents I recall, he was the one I felt was the most capable of fixing some stuff. Whereas like he was an idiot. So I didn't have any expectations of him. But I really thought Obama, I was naive.
What you described was exactly what the campaign intended.
Yeah.
If you look at Obama's memoir, he describes his campaign, and now I'm quoting him, is his phrase. He describes his campaign as a neat trick. He said, I stood for nothing. People just saw in me what they wanted to see in me. And he purposely stood for nothing. He describes himself at another point as the ultimate Rorschach test. Everybody saw what they wanted to see, which is exactly what you just said. And it was a very brazen, I think, a remarkably unself-knowing statement that he was boasting about the fact that he stood for nothing. And then once in office, he did what he was put there to do. And he did it, which is to serve his slave masters. In any event, I have to get off now because it's after 10 and I'm a schoolboy. I have to still do my homework before I go to sleep. So I want to wish you both the best.
Finkelstein, we cannot thank you enough for coming on again. Your knowledge of these subjects is immensely important. Guys, if you are not currently following the professor, please look up his work. It is exceptional beyond words. And we thank you again for coming on. Let's not wait another 2 years to do it again, but definitely at some point down the road.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Best of luck.
Have a good night. Great guy. And a great conversation.
Always.
Timing it just right.
I really like talking to the smart people.
Yes. And he didn't mince words, which was great.
I gotta prep up for if we can get Dr. West to come on. I gotta prep up so that I don't be an idiot again.
Just so you guys know, we have connected with Dr. West. He does not have time at this exact moment, but we are working on it. And if you guys,
we'll get him on eventually. We'll get him on here.
Yes. Well, I think we're pretty good at eventually making it happen sooner rather than later. If you guys do like our content, please go over to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5 a month. You can become a wonderful supporter of our channel. If we are so fortunate enough to acquire more funds for the show, we now have a producer. You guys know Colin from Status.
And guys, actually, we have another guest coming on, yes?
Possibly. Our friend, Zach Latrell.
I saw him there a minute ago.
Yes. The problem is that he's having an issue with his connection. Let me finish what I'm doing first, please.
I'm sorry.
So if you decide to become a $10 patron, we do still have the Mansion Parliamentary bumper sticker, but we're going to come up with an idea for what the next level will be. And then, of course, for anyone who chooses to be a $25 a month or just a $25 contributor, you will get the Generational Change jersey, which we all know and love. Yes, Travers, we know. You don't have to keep pointing that out. I know you like to tweak and twist and turn, and that's fine. You can do as you wish.
What has he done? What is he do? What is he nagging about?
That he went on one of the shows.
Which show?
Arbian.
He's
been on with a lot. Yeah, but he's been on with a lot of people. And so if you do not, but we'll get him. I'm confident. And so with that said, if you do not want to put your credit card on the grid, and a lot of people do not, but you want to contribute to our wonderful little show, please, by all means, go over to Cash App and $Gen Change. That is how you can chip in any amount that you like. And like we said, if you do donate $25 or more, you will be able to get the Generational Change jersey.
Which neither of us are wearing.
Not tonight, but we are on the road and we're out. Like I said, I traveled. I didn't bring the shirt with me. It's my fault. It is what it is. Karina, we have spoken with Marianne in the past. RFK, we've connected with his people. See if we can get him on as well. If you guys have any guest suggestions or anything for the show, for that matter, that you have or would like to make suggestions to, please go over and email us at generationalchange@gmail.com. So if you want to get in touch with us for anything that you have on your mind, by all means, please do.
We have good stuff coming up.
We do. Who do we have coming up on Wednesday, Jen? Take it away.
I forget who look, I was really craving to talk to Medea, so I reached out, and guys, Medea Benjamin is going to be joining us on Wednesday evening. I really want to pick her brain about Ukraine. That kind of rhymes. But there's a lot of things we can talk with Medea about. I just, it's been a hot minute. So, but I know we have someone else and I'm forgetting. Who else do we have?
Well, we also have Hannah Riley of Cop City.
Yes. That's the girl that I sent you the picture of her little account. And I said, please get her on. Yeah. So guys, we're going to have a whole revolutionary activist show on Wednesday. So then we're talking with one of the lead activists at Cop City. And we're talking to like the queen of being carried out of press conferences, Medea Benjamin. And so, yeah, it'll be like a hero worship thing. It'll be cool.
Yes, I agree. And then I can check the calendar. I know that we have a couple of other guests coming up that we'll have, lots of great conversations with. But we do have a surprise for you guys.
Peter's Nerdy War of 1812 podcast.
Yes, we're going to have Professor Don Hickey, recently retired professor of Wayne State College out in Nebraska. He is going to be discussing the War of 1812. That is one of the most important wars in our nation's history. It's also probably the singular reason above all others that Andrew Jackson is revered and is considered the most controversial figure in the early stages of our nation's history, considering all the terrible things he did as president. But you cannot deny the importance of the Battle of New Orleans and what he was able to do. But without further ado,
Nina has an open invite to come on whenever she wants to, Peter, but I don't know, does she want to come on and talk about her latest endeavors?
Nina announced today that she's got something up her sleeve. I don't know what that is.
I have an idea.
I have an idea too, but I'm not 100% sure what that will be.
Yeah.
So we will see.
I think it's labor related.
I hope it is. I don't think she's going to. I don't think Nina's going to abandon the Democratic Party. I don't see that happening.
No. I think that I think she's got some sort of like labor movement venture that she's working on. That's my guess.
Well, whatever Nina's up to, I am sure we will support it wholeheartedly. But if you guys think that we were just going to end the show about an hour and 10 minutes in after having a wonderful guest in Professor Norman Finkelstein,
we got a twofer.
We got a twofer tonight. And this one, in my humble opinion, is even more important. And I'll tell you what. So for those of you who've been paying close attention, and yes, we certainly have, the labor movement, and before we start, Double K, just want to say thank you as always for being such an amazing supporter of our show. Yes. Thank you for the contribution. So for those of you who, and Double K, perfect transition.
Because we got labor for you, Double K.
So with that said, we are huge advocates for labor. The labor movement, among other reasons, is why Jen ran for Congress against anti-labor Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Right now, as many of you have been paying attention, there is a huge, substantially huge labor strike going on in Los Angeles, California, for both SAG-AFTRA and WGA, the Writers Guild. But that is nothing compared to what this strike will be like if the UPS workers decide to walk off the job. It literally will stop the economy in its tracks to the tune of billions of dollars a day will be lost. And so somebody who could speak to this and knows it well and is a friend of Jordan's Status Quo News and is now a friend of ours and is one who is helping organize and lead this effort, Zach Latrell of UPS Workers, welcome for the first time and hopefully not the last time to Generational Change.
Hey guys, it is so awesome to be here with you.
Thank you so much for coming on. You know, we've had over the course of, I don't know, our show, we've often have people on from the labor community. It's very important. I truly feel that it's the only way that we're ever going to get anywhere collectively is through labor, especially at this point. And obviously politically, unfortunately, we don't have a labor party in this country. So all of the labor action that we're seeing is completely outside the political process. But as it's heating up, I still feel somewhat hopeful that it's going to overflow and create a ruckus to the point where they're going to have to deal with it, which is why, and I hate to say I'm hopeful for a strike, because the reality is that's hard for everybody. Like, that's not the ideal situation. And I don't say that flippantly, like, oh yes, everybody should strike. But, you know, it's enough is enough. And if you guys are so valuable, then you need to be paid accordingly. And so I'm very thankful that you're here to talk about what's going on with you. And we do love ourselves some Teamsters. So, yeah.
Well, thanks so much for having me and for covering our story. I'm strikes out of local 886 here in Oklahoma. My dad was a warehouse teamster, and he went on strike for 14 weeks on communities. Good union jobs are hard to come by in places like Oklahoma. But withholding our labor is the only thing that we have. The only thing that we can do is put our hands in our pockets and not generate them all of those profits effectively, which
Zach,
you guys well know.
Zach, what is the main point of contention that will ultimately lead to this strike? You know, we see the anti-labor propaganda, as I call it, that shows up all the time saying, oh, these guys are well compensated. Look, you guys can't even get AC in your trucks. And on top of that,
wait, I think, did you guys just get that though? Did they just, did I hear right that they recently finally caved in on the air conditioning thing?
You did.
Yeah.
You did hear right. So we have some 45 tentative agreements with the company. Know what we will see, right? What we will get to vote on. But right now they've moved on AC. So everything now, to make sure that I get to see it in my lifetime, there's also a provision where they will retrofit a third of the vehicles, a third of the. We're going to see fans and heat shields put in, and we're looking forward to it. Some sort of ventilation is really necessary. It's so humid that when you sweat, it doesn't cool you down. Our drivers are in the hospital, but people fall out all the time, and it's not even as bad here yet as it gets. Trophy being what it is, it's only going to get hotter. It's only going to get hotter. So we try to take care of ourselves. One of the has a responsibility to take care of us as well, right? And so coming to the table with them, we have managed to secure air conditioning, but so many people working in the warehouse in ungodly temperature, and I'd like to see AC in there for our part-timers and for the folks. They don't make good wages. Sometimes it's poverty wages, depending on what part of the country they're working in. They don't make enough to support 7 kids, and you do what you have to do as a parent to take care of your family. And my job now is enough, but it's really time to support the 60% of our.
One thing, Zach, that I think doesn't really get talked about enough, especially with what goes on in the private sector, is the importance of what it would mean to have universal health care in the United States and what that would mean for workers, because very often we hear from a lot of labor unions that they constantly have to negotiate their health care. Of course, there's obviously issues at the top with management, shareholders, people like delegates, if you will. And so how much of a difference do you think healthcare would make to not just UPS workers, but labor in general, in terms of the ability to negotiate better terms for your work conditions?
I can speak to health immune disease. I have Crohn's disease, and I give myself an injection every 2 weeks that costs $2,500 without insurance. Union insurance because of my team care. My entire family is covered in the kind of comprehensive this country should have. It is a godsend. I don't like that, but I tell you, they don't just give it to you. UPS management, our supervision they uh, from their family, so they don't get that. The union, we still do, but they recently just took that away, and there's nothing that we can see that and know that that's the sort of thing that comes for working people all of the time, but it doesn't. As far as our medical system is so messed up in this country. I have 5 sisters, and 3 of them are having medical issues. Watching my dad die, and I'm not far from that, So I look at our medical system. I look at the fact as anything. 3 out of 4 of my grandparents are dead. My dad's dead from cancer, right? So my risk is up there, and then I've got the Crohn's, and then the medicine that they give. We all do our best, right? We do our best in the here and now to make things better for our family here and now. But I want my kids, and I want everybody coming after me to have better. And I know that you guys do too. So
Yeah.
it would
Let
be
me ask you this.
Huge.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me ask you this, Zach. So we saw what happened with the railroad workers, and that they were all sort of ready to go. And then at the last minute, or I know it wasn't really, but what appeared to be the last minute, we had Joe sweep in and basically put labor in its place on behalf of management. And there is now rumbling I'm hearing of that sort of same nonsense going down again. My understanding is that the Teamsters were pretty rigid in that, and that they were pretty resolved. So what do you think is, going to come up with this?
Working people have faced court injunctions and that sort of thing before labor progress by listening to those necessarily. Now, I'm not speaking on behalf of my union necessarily. That our leadership, our international leadership, has and so we'll see what happens. Sean's a Boston boy, and we got no part of it. We stay out of it, and so we don't. If Joe of making this happen, he's going to have a much easier time talking to the little tiny board of directors instead of 340 practicing, and we're ready for the real thing. So if you want to prevent a strike, talk to me. They know the numbers. That everything is laid out. There has been no busting our butts for a year, and it's time. It's 7 days. it's time.
I'd love to see it happen just as a matter of principle. I feel like this country is really ripe for it. I think people are very, very privileged, entitled, and spoiled. And the idea of something being like remotely inconvenient just sets them off. And I think we all need to be very, very inconvenienced for people, obviously, for people to realize the value of our working people. And especially people that are delivery people and in our infrastructure. I think it is critical. And people all just expect that to just happen. I should just wake up and get my package. You know, like all of these things just land in our lap and nobody wants to be remotely inconvenienced. And I am saying that as inconveniencing as it will be, because I know that it will be very inconveniencing to have UPS on strike. I would so much rather walk on the picket lines with UPS people and be in solidarity and just accept that things are going to maybe be inconvenient for a little while, but it is so worth it if we can get people what they're really owed, and especially those part-time workers. I know that's a huge problem with UPS, is the discrepancy between the full-time people and the part-time people and all this stuff, which to me just screams of management's way of screwing working people over enough periods of time so that you create a whole class that isn't at all unionized. Like this whole unrepresented block of people that they can have their way with. So I am hopeful that you guys can put them in their place.
Yeah, I think that we're all pretty campaigns don't just rely on hope. You know, it's a lot of hard work, and so I want to thank you for having me on here. People know that you know, your UPS driver may be going on strike, and there are opportunities to reach out to them in places like where I am. It's really hot. If we're going to be on the picket line and instead of delivering out there petting dogs and bringing people their stuff, but the only thing that gets is when you change the numbers on the bottom line. And so what we make an impact every day by padding, and then they can deliver the boxes and they can see if they can do it themselves.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Let me tell you something. I have been wanting to put my yellow vest on and go out and be marching with people for a while now. I am ready. And yeah, I mean, this is the way it has to happen. Power concedes nothing.
Didn't realize that
Absolutely.
I was on mute.
Power
All I can say is
concedes nothing without a demand, and yet.
That's right.
Damn right. Guys, brace for impact, August 1st. So be ready. And we 1000% stand on the side of labor. Zach, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast this evening. Keep fighting the good fight. We 1000% have your back. Labor is the only way we are going to turn this country around for the better. Keep at it, and we'll be right there with you. And best of luck if ultimately what comes to pass does next week.
We won't see you because I'm not going to Oklahoma, but we will see your fellow Teamsters down in South Florida, and we'll stand with them.
We'll be out there with them, 100%.
The state motto is labor conquers all. And you guys are going to see that on August 1st.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, brother. Best of luck.
All right.
You know,
Bye-bye.
I always love it when we get the labor people on the most, always.
I think they recognize that what our show is about really is about the message, because very often the only time that media generally wants to talk to people in labor, especially ones that are not, union bosses, is to belittle them and tell them how, oh, you guys are just causing a problem here. You're not
right.
Really.
You realize you're going to shut down the whole economy. Yes. Yes, Karen, we do. That's in fact what we're trying to accomplish. So yes. I think we are very right.
Now, I always love when they say, oh, can't you think of a better way to do this?
Right.
And I'm thinking, you're answering the question. You're answering the question.
If they
You don't
shouldn't
like
have
it,
to do
so
this.
clearly. Yeah, no, that to me, that in itself says it all.
Well,
It's
here's
like,
the thing, people. Do you
something
think
better.
that the unions just get up one day out of the blue and just say, you know what? We're going on strike. No, that's not how it works. It comes after months, if not years, of failed negotiations where workers are getting nowhere and their voices aren't being heard. It is their last resort when their demands, which are generally, everyone I've ever seen has been extremely reasonable. I have yet to see these unreasonable worker demands. So if they're having to beg for things like air conditioning, like, that is not a sign of a healthy working labor economy. It's just not. See, if they didn't have to do that, they wouldn't be striking. It's not fun for them to strike. They actually want to work and do their jobs. They just want to be compensated fairly for what they do. That's all. So if they wanted a different job, they could have a different job. They actually like their jobs and they would just like to be fairly compensated.
Oh, isn't it the whole, hey, why don't you, if you don't like your job, go find another one. Oh, I love when the not so intelligent conservative feels the need to throw that out there. Oh, you don't like what your boss is paying you? Go leave and find another job. It's just this coddling of
Travers. The only people that should be working naked are the people that look great naked. And the problem is that's a very subjective thing. I see some women walking around that if I had a body that great, I probably would walk around naked. But unfortunately, the people that walk around with their parts all showing generally don't look great naked. And so, no, we do not need to. If your belly hangs over your pants, no, we don't need to see your belly button ring. No, we do not. Yeah. So it's very subjective. But no, I don't want to see most people walking around naked. There's some people possibly.
Yeah. And there's one thing that you guys also have to remember. The reason why the Teamsters is different than the AFL-CIO is because the AFL-CIO is in lockstep with the Democratic establishment. The Teamsters are not. And so when that happens, you have a labor union that, for the most part, adheres to the will of its workers. And that's important. That's extremely important. And we need a hell of a lot more of that. And once again, if you guys like the content that we're putting out, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, click the bell. Colin, anything else that I am forgetting that I should be mentioning right now? We have a big show coming up on Wednesday, 9 p.m. live stream. We're going to be talking with, now I'm forgetting her name. Riley?
No, it's Hannah Riley.
Hannah Riley with Stop Cop City. And then we are going to be talking with Medea Benjamin of Code Pink.
Medea's she's like one of my heroes. I love Medea.
Yeah. And as a quick reminder, if you are a little lazy or whatever the condition might be, or you already have a payment in YouTube, you can also become a YouTube member now for generational change, which will still support the channel. Right now you'll get access to just different emotes and stuff, or if you want to double support and you want to be a patron so you get the cool shirt and stuff, and you also want the emotes, so you kind of become both, whatever floats your boat. But that's also an option as well.
Yeah, Peter, we forget now that we can have YouTube members.
Yes, that's really cool. Yeah, we're learning. Cool. We're learning on the fly. And we had pretty good viewership tonight, although I'm sure a lot of it had to do with Mr. Finkelstein, but we got into the mid-50s. Okay. Hey, we're coming along. We're doing what we can.
And Monday night is the good night now because we're not like going up against everybody and their mother.
Yeah, that's true. Wednesday is it's a tricky night. We're going to have to figure out if we may need to switch again.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because, no.
Still something to think about. But the next time you see us live will be on Wednesday. And I believe, will we both be in the studio on Wednesday?
No, I'm going to be in Charleston.
Okay. Well, I'll be in the studio on Wednesday, so I'll have better lighting.
I could have better lighting. I don't know until I get there.
Fair enough. And before we go, let's see if just want to let you guys know. Yes, Hannah Riley will be coming on, and then we'll have Medea Benjamin. And then
I'm so excited. That's like a real female revolutionary power episode.
Then next Monday, we will have Professor Don Hickey to come on and talk about the War of 1812.
That's a nerdy episode.
Yes, that'll be fun. We do not have a guest for Wednesday, August 2nd yet, but on Monday, August 7th, somebody Jen has been looking forward to having on here for probably a year now. Carol Anderson will be coming on our podcast. So
guys, Carol Anderson, if anybody is like sort of in my little book club with me, nobody is. It's a book club of one. But her most recent book, which is what I'm going over again now, is called The Second. And it really has to do with the interconnection, the intersection between the Second Amendment and Black America, and how it was basically created to suppress slave rebellions, blah, 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 and to where we are now with the Second Amendment and the Black community. And it's just really interesting. And I'm very excited to talk to her.
On that note, DeFreak, thank you. I think you do great work and have good American values, even though we're different political parties.
Are we different political parties? Because I'm not really with a party. I'm just registered with one because I kind of have to be. But I wouldn't say that I have any sort of like heart alliance to them. Like my principles are not with them. So maybe we're not that different.
No, we're not. And once you take the party labels away, it's amazing how much we all agree on. Mario, we are not Mondays will always be. We have never changed Monday. Monday night has always been a staple.
We're only talking about Wednesdays, Mario.
Yes.
And the only time we have issues with Monday is when it's football season and Peter has problems.
Well, that's rare, but that was, I think that was the occasion where we may have had Sunday. I think we may have done Sunday at one time briefly, but no, Monday night has always been a staple of the show. We may switch Wednesday to Thursday. That's still being discussed, but we used to do Thursday. It's not like we hadn't done it before. So
Which we switched because we were opposite other show. Like, I don't know.
Yes. Well, we'll powwow as a team. We'll figure it out, but you guys will definitely be the first to know. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, perhaps become a patron, make a contribution. And in all things, we love you all. See you Wednesday.
Bye, all.